Oh, I like this one, and it could get into a larger discussion about workflow. So maybe I'll just like speak on it for a minute. Noah asked here, and maybe even some people are talking about in the Discord, analog versus virtual synths. And there's something conceptually which I think is interesting here, which is not can a computer get the sound of, and oh yeah, converter shootout. We're going to do that too. Not can the computer get the same sound as you can get out of analog gear, because that's a debate that I think there are still a few things. There's still a few pieces of tube gear that I haven't heard, and certain kinds of saturation that I haven't heard replicated in the computer. But things like synthesizers, I'm pretty confident that if you gave me a patch on my Prophet 6, that I could, with enough time, get something that sounds pretty much indistinguishable in the computer, either through samples or emulators or whatever. But the point is not just, is that possible? And maybe some places it's not. Maybe, you know, a multiple oscillator with the analog drift and something about how those things combine can't quite be recreated in the computer. But even if it can, the reason, if you have a few $1,000s to spend on this sort of thing, the reason to get something like a Prophet or one of these analog synths is because the workflow is so much better. And it's not just that it's easier to get a sound quickly, which is important. Speed is important, but also like joy and tactile response. It's a different aspect of workflow than clicking on a screen and clicking and being on a mouse. And there's something really important about that I don't think people talk about enough. I mean, obviously people have talked about it, but the idea of playing something without a screen in your face, where you're actually having to physically, I mean, this is why I love my Juno 6 so much. And you know, shout out Juno 60 owners and Juno 106 owners. The 6 is my favorite because there's no presets and no MIDI and no anything. So literally each time I touch a slider, it's a totally different sound. And that's a part of workflow that is really important to creatives. And, you know, if you're a mixer and we're talking about synths, it's a different thing, but like aspects of your workflow that are there for something different than a computer / for fun, I think is an interesting topic. How do you think about those things?
Yeah, just one extra layer. I mean, whatever, all you said is 100% agree here. Is it's just more performative, right? And music should be performed. It's a weird sentence to have to say, but a lot of music is not performed. And just because you're automating up a filter cutoff on a screen, I mean, it's kind of performative, but it's not the same thing. And that's the je ne sais quoi that we can't really put our finger on when it comes to analog and digital. It's the performative nature. I think like the Roland Cloud, look, the synths are digital. You don't think Roland emulated the best versions of their 106 and all their Juno rack mods? Like, it's as good as, it sounds amazing. Yeah. Like the only thing different, because when I was producing, I mean, I have a real Juno and I have a Prophet. And then I would just go in the box because honestly, I thought it sounded better except for the noise. And then I can drive the tubes that I'm sending it through, right? So at the same, like the synth isn't really, the sound of the synth is similar, but like when you're analog, you're putting it through some sort of transformer or some tubes or something that gives it more characteristic, more unique. But then I was like, but I can just send those out through a hardware insert and back in through the tubes. And then, so there's benefits of both, but the performative nature is untouchable. Unless you have some crazy macro controller that does wild shit and you're so intuitive on it that it feels analog and it feels like an extension of you. But sonically speaking, they're interchangeable.